What's up, New York Mets fans? Welcome back to the True Mets Talk podcast. It's your boy CP. It is January 25th, 2024, and we are ever so slowly taking these baby steps as we approach opening day in just a couple of months. And I figured today would be the perfect time to drop an episode about the starting pitching rotation for the New York Mets, not only as it pertains to who we have going forward in 2024, but also taking a look at some of the struggles the Mets front office are going to have to deal with at the start of the 2025 offseason as the pitching rotation is drastically going to change and there's going to be holes to fill next offseason as well. And we'll talk about how all of that relates to the two pitching prospects that are most ready in the Mets organization, ready to be called up and be given their turn to prove what they got. Before we get into that, as always, shameless plugging, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate the support. Bottom right-hand corner, if you're new here, make sure you hover over my icon, bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and subscribe to the channel as you're watching this video. And likewise, comment all your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. There's going to be some links in the description. Check out some more Mets content on my channel if you missed those. And as always, follow me on all my social media handles on X and Instagram, the same handle as my YouTube at CPNYSPORTS. Okay, like I said, this is a very important podcast to make surrounding the pitching rotation for the New York Mets, the starting pitching rotation for the New York Mets, not only as we head into 2024 to see what we have, but also looking at what we have or may not have at the start of the 2025 offseason. And this quote from Will Salmon in his latest article per The Athletic says it all. Quote unquote, ideally, the Mets want an internal option or two to step up before the organization makes plans for the 2025 rotation. And with 2025 just around the corner after the season, you would have to imagine this article is alluding to the fact, and this quote is alluding to the fact that the Mets are going to use 2024 to start building that plan out and seeing what these prospects on your screen, Christian Scott on the left and Mike Vasil on the right have. Now, before we get into those player profiles and a brief synopsis on these two pitching prospects, let's get into the fact that we have to analyze what we have in 2024 moving forward versus what we may not have in 2025 in the offseason. This is the rotation outlook for the Mets starting rotation in 2024. Obviously, the mainstays at the top are Kodai Senga, your ace, and Jose Quintana. And your new additions are Luis Severino, Sean Manaea, and Adrian Hauser. And the biggest question mark here in the rotation is who's going to be stepping up in that sixth spot, presumably when the Mets decide to announce that they're going to deploy a six-man rotation. I think that with the question marks in this 2024 rotation and knowing that the Mets probably aren't going to be upgrading anymore externally via free agency or trade for this 2024 rotation in this offseason, we can sort of we have to mitigate maybe the injury history of Luis Severino or the question mark of Jose Quintana, who had that nagging hamstring injury and getting up there in age. We have to sort of mitigate, or the front office has to mitigate at least, because I'm just a fan here talking about this team. They have to mitigate the uncertainties of this rotation and potentially any injuries. And that's where you'll see maybe a Joey Lucchesi, who I would advocate for in being that sixth man in the rotation to start the season off on opening day, or a Jose Butto, who showed in the latter half of 2023 that he has what it takes. Or maybe Big Drip Tyler McGill, familiar face, gets another chance to prove that he can maybe be consistent in this league, and that he hasn't really shown that so far, but maybe he gets a last chance here as the sixth man. Regardless of how it plays out, one factor remains, and that is the names at the bottom of your screen have the potential to not be here in the 2025 season for the New York Mets. Luis Severino, Jose Quintana, and newly acquired Adrian Hauser are all going to be free agents, in addition to Joey Lucchesi, who also is not pictured here at the bottom of your screen in that list of names, but is also going to be a free agent in 2025. And Sean Manaea, I think he has a bounce back year. I think a lot of people are underselling him and what he's going to be able to provide for this Mets team in 2024. If he turns his career around in Queens, puts up solid numbers, you can be rest assured that he's going to appear he's going to opt out of that player option and appear in the open market in the 2025 offseason. Now, like I said, if Luis Severino and Sean Manaea do well, it's not to say that the Mets can't re-sign them as well. Those would probably be the top two re-sign candidates of the four free agents, right? But like I said, there's still going to be other rotation pieces that the Mets have to figure out. And it's not feasible to expect them to figure those rotation pieces out all via free agency and via trade. And that's where the farm system comes into play. And that's why you have pitching prospects that are ready to come up. And that's where we'll get into those prospect profiles here. Starting with Mike Vasil, presumably the most ready pitching prospect in the entirety of the Mets organization. According to Baseball Prospectus, he is ranked the Mets' number 10 prospect, and you see his numbers from 2023 and your little synopsis here on your screen in orange. Obviously, it was a tale of two tapes for Mike Basil in 2023, appearing in both AA and AAA, and the AA numbers were a lot better than the AAA numbers. Obviously, got off to a great start in AA, had a nice little strikeouts per nine, over 10, which is phenomenal. He kept the walks down, and his ERA was floating right there around 3.71 in 10 games in comparison to his AAA numbers, where he appeared in 16 games. ERA floated up to 5.30. Whip inflated in comparison to those AA numbers as well. Strikeouts per nine remain consistent, which is one of Mike Basil's great features that he has, his put away capability, as you can see in my notes down at the bottom in white. And the biggest discrepancy between AA and AAA was his walk numbers. The command was not there, and he walked a lot of batters, which inevitably haunted him. Now, a lot of people are talking about Mike Basil, and they're sort of writing him off due to these inflated numbers, at least from what I've seen on YouTube or the Mets fan base community on Twitter. And I'm here to tell you all that I do think that he is still capable of making an impact lower in the rotation, whether it's 2024 or presumably at the start of 2025. I think he's going to get his shot either way in spring training to prove what he has. I do think, just a disclaimer, that he's not going to appear in the opening day roster unless anything unforeseen happens injury-wise, and he's going to get sent back down to AAA to sort of get those consistent numbers and prove that he's better than what those AAA numbers in 2023 showed. But nonetheless, his strikeout capability, you see, remain consistent. And I think that's going to remain consistent in the major leagues as well whenever he gets to Queens. Now, like I said, he doesn't have a ceiling of an ace type caliber pitcher in the major leagues. He's more projected to be a 4 or 5 type starter, which is fine. That is fine with me. He doesn't need to be an ace. Like I said in the previous screen here, the Mets are going to have a lot of free agents, and they're going to need to backfill that rotation, which is where Mike Basil could be a major component and a major asset moving forward into that 2025 season. Some more notes on Mike Basil here. Obviously, he was drafted by the Mets in the 8th round in the 2021 MLB draft. The inconsistencies are a concern, as you can tell in the entirety of his 2023 here. The discrepancy that was present between AA and AAA, and in 2022, there was a big discrepancy between his A ball numbers and his high A ball numbers as well. I encourage you to look at the baseball reference stats surrounding his 2022 season as well. He has a very short stride, which is very weird to me because he's 6'5", 225, has a very big frame, and he still throws a mid-90s fastball, right? Mid to upper 90s. I think it's like 95 to 96. But his stride is very weird to me. If you look at his highlights, he doesn't use his lower half much, and his arm sort of lags, which is a very big injury concern, although he's remained relatively healthy, I would suppose. But the Mets have worked on this delivery for Mike Vasil, but being he is still very young, he's not even 24 years old yet. He'll be 24 in March. This is something where you can't change too much too soon with this type of pitcher. And I think that's where we're going to see the Mets sort of work with him even still in terms of lengthening that stride and potentially adding another mile per hour or two on that fastball, that electric fastball that he already possesses. Also, like I said, great put away capability. You see the strikeouts per nine remain consistent even in those inflated numbers in AAA. He has a nice little slider to go along with that electric fastball, has great movement on it, and that is probably going to be his best off speed pitch. And like I said, just sheer put away capability. You see a high strikeout rate with Mike Basil as well, and that's where he's going to thrive in the major leagues. All in all, like I'm saying here with Mike Basil, and I guess my entire point is, although he doesn't have as high of a ceiling as Christian Scott, who we'll get into here in just a second, he is going to get the opportunity to prove himself. Probably, if I had to guess, before Christian Scott does, although a lot of people may disagree with me there, I think Mike Basil is a little bit further along, and we'll see him in 2024, whether it's because of an injury concern in starting rotation or for the simple fact that the Mets might not be as competitive at the trade deadline in 2024 as David Stearns has been preaching or has originally hoped. You'll start to see those one-year contracts be moved. Maybe a Luis Severino gets moved. Maybe an Adrian Hauser gets moved, and we start to see these prospects coming up. But keep an eye out on Mike Basil. Still has a lot of potential to be a great pitcher for the New York Mets in 2024 and beyond. So keep an eye out on him. Now, a lot of people have been talking about Christian Scott a lot more so than a Mike Vasil. You see, per baseball prospectus, Christian Scott is the number 5 overall Mets prospect right now. We also saw in their top 101 prospects overall in the entirety of the MLB, he appeared at number 88. His very first time in the top 100. So congrats to him. And you see his 2023 synopsis right here. Great statistics all around, kept the consistency between high A ball and double A, and just sheerly dominated. An elite whip, great ERA, somewhere floating there, just over 2 to mid 2s. The strikeouts were there, got even better in double A as far as the strikeouts department than he was in high A ball, and he kept the walks low, which is something that Mike Basil could not do when he got to AAA. That remained consistent, and I like to see that consistency with Christian Scott. Fun fact, when Omar Narvaez, this is a little interesting fact, I should say, when Omar Narvaez was rehabbing in A-ball, I guess last season, he actually worked with Christian Scott, and Christian Scott provided the media with a quote that him and Narvaez, it was kind of cool to get to work with Narvaez to sort of get that knowledge from him, talking about different pitches to throw in different counts and just sort of sharing that knowledge from a major league sort of perspective in terms of getting him ready for those upper tiers in the minor leagues and also approaching the major league level. So that was neat to hear. I know a lot of trade rumors surrounding Omar Narvaez, but at the very minimum, at least he helped out one of our young pitching studs here in the minor leagues when he got to work with him. Most interesting fact about Christian Scott is that he was an elite reliever in Florida, in Gainesville. He went to the University of Florida. He was an elite reliever there before being drafted by the Mets in 2021, where they inevitably made him a starting pitcher at the beginning of the 2022 season. There was a very big adjustment period for him. In one of his other quotes, he was saying that being a reliever, obviously being out there for a shorter amount of time, you don't have to see the lineup the second time around and even the third time around. And being a starting pitcher, that was a lot more different of an adjustment for him in terms of seeing many more batters and the same batters in the game. Maybe they get a little bit more of a feel for what he's throwing and what he has to offer. So that also is something to consider with Christian Scott. Higher upside, a lot of people would say that he has higher upside than Basil. He also has an electric fastball, mid to upper 90s. I think he's a tick above what Mike Vasil throws for his fastball, but he also does possess a slider and a changeup combo. He has great movement on that slider, and that is probably also his best secondary pitch. A lot of put away capability with Christian Scott as well. You see the 11.2 strikeouts per nine in his tenure over 12 games in Double A in 2023. Absolutely phenomenal. I think he won Pitcher of the Year in Double A. Someone fact check me on that, but I think that's what my buddy Amish Country Mets fan Nelson was saying, and he's been talking about Christian Scott a lot himself, especially on our Interstate Mets Report shows and our Mets Hot Stove Lives. Make sure you go check that out. It's always a great time and a great conversation. But Like I said, sort of a similar situation here with Christian Scott. If things break maybe left for the Mets in 2024, or there's an injury that happens, I think that we have the potential to see both of these guys make their debut in 2024, which is going to automatically make this season worthwhile, regardless if the Mets are competitive or not, because seeing these guys and what they have to provide ahead of a very tough offseason in 2025 in terms of the Mets front office filling a lot of these holes that they're presumably going to be faced with is going to be something that's going to be fun. And I think that it's not going to happen at the beginning of 2024. So if you're hoping for that, don't get your hopes up. I'm here to sort of, I guess, shoot that confidence down. We will have to wait somewhere, maybe post trade deadline, I would say, to see these two guys up. But nonetheless, it's great, circling back to this important quote, that the front office realizes and is going to give these young guys a chance to prove themselves, perhaps as early as this 2024 season. So let me know. Thank you all for watching so much. First and foremost, let me know who you're most excited to see, whether it's Mike Vasil, whether it's Christian Scott. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast episode, I didn't even mention the other pitching prospects that are a little bit more of, I guess, projects at this point, in Blade Tidwell, who has electric stuff, and maybe a Dominic Hamill as well, who did really well also in Double-A last season. I'm going to mention those guys when they seem to be a little bit more ready, maybe along the same level playing field as a Vasil and Christian Scott of how ready they are right now in terms of making an immediate impact for this rotation. But let me know who you're most excited to see. Christian Scott, Mike Vasil, on their way up very shortly. Hit that thumbs up button. As always, I appreciate the support. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. A lot more Mets talk on my channel coming out. And comment your thoughts and opinions about anything and everything that you heard on this podcast episode. Likewise, you know where to find me on all my social media handles. You know where to go for more Mets talk. Get notified when I go live or drop a pre-recorded episode just like this one. I appreciate you all. Whenever you get to listening to this, I'm going to drop it on Thursday night. This is January 25th. But if you are here at a later date, do not be afraid to turn on that notification button to not miss any future content. It has been another episode of the True Mets Talk podcast. It's your boy CP. Until we get some more Mets reports, I'm out. Interstate Mets Report live tomorrow, 5 p.m., joined by a familiar face on this channel, Talking Mets with Rob. He's going to be coming over to the Interstate Mets Report show, and I'm going to be sort of hosting that while Nelson has some previous commitments. So stay tuned for that. We might even talk about these two guys on that show. You never know. You'll get some outside perspective in terms of another Mets content creator and his thoughts about these two guys and the overall rotation that we talked about today in this episode. It's your boy CP. I'm out. Peace. Thank you for watching the latest episode of the CP New York Sports Pod. If you enjoyed this content, make sure you hit that thumbs up, comment your thoughts and opinions, and use the lower right-hand button of this video to subscribe to the channel. Thank you.